Hey everybody. I wanted to do a few videos on songwriting. I had some people suggest that I do a video about sort of the stories behind the songs. And while I don't necessarily want to do that because they're a blend of sort of creative writing and reality. Um, and I'll the ideas there. I'll let you figure it out. But I do think kind of talking about songwriting in general would be something that me of a few years ago would have been really interested in. Um, I'll preface this whole thing and just say I've been around people who write songs completely differently than this. So this is not intended to be a sort of this is how you write songs video. This is entirely um, supposed to be this is how I've written songs. This is and so in that vein, I want to break it kind of into three different categories. The first is sort of the um, recognizing and sort of cultivating the creativity aspect of it. So getting sort of the creative spark. That's going to be one video. That's what I'm going to talk about today. The second one is about turning that spark into sort of a real song that works. Um, and then the last one would be sort of arranging. I think arranging is a huge part of songwriting, and it's something that arranging and editing are incredibly huge in songwriting the way that I do it. Um, and then I think I'll do another video that's going to be about sort of recording and producing and making those sorts of choices, but I don't necessarily consider that to be part of the songwriting process. That's more of a production idea. Um, so obviously there's nothing wrong with somebody who can be inspired and go knock out a song in 20 minutes or 45 minutes. It's happened to me a few times. I love it. um, they're like little gifts that you're just given, and that's a beautiful thing. um, However, most of the time I have to work at it. It's probably one of the hardest uh, things to do, for me as a musician, because to me it's been a learned skill, right? It's not just like I woke up one day and it's like I'm going to write songs. I'm constantly interested in how other people have written songs. I've read David Byrne's book and Paul McCartney's book. I've read lyrics to all the Beatles songs, and sort of study, you know, great songwriter lyrics, whether it's John Prine or Jason Isbell or whatever. Like I just like looking at them because they sound a lot different than they look on paper, right? Um, and I like getting into sort of, what the sort of traditional forms are, whether it's, more jazz type forms, or the way that like Queens of the Stone Age goes about arrangements, and the different functions that songs can serve, and just trying to inform myself by listening, and trying to understand what is going on in a lot of that music, right? So that being said, there are so many. It's an infinite way of doing it. The point of this is just to try to maybe make some of those ideas a little bit more tangible, at least within the context of what I do, right? And if that helps you, then that's cool. If it's just interesting, that's cool. If it's not, and you want to skip the video, that's cool too. Um, so I'll start and just say the first thing that is the most important thing, um, that I have found is being able to recognize and cultivate sort of this creative spark. Um, and it can show up anywhere. It can show up in lyrics. It can show up in hearing a cool sound, whether it's a drum sound or a guitar sound, or a cool distorted bass sound or something. You know, Thinking, if you hear a cool chord change somewhere and you want to incorporate that into what you're doing. Um, if it gets stuck in your head, that's probably a good sign that that's something that you should go figure out what that is. Um, if if you start learning a new instrument, or you hear orchestration somewhere that just sounds really good, it can put you in a direction if you want to chase it down. Again, hearing a lyric, basically any of these things that are hooks, and to me it's something, being able to come up with something that you think is really cool, that you haven't heard before. That's the sort of litmus test, right? Is like what can you do that you really like and you think is the coolest thing that you haven't heard before? Because um, so my freshman year of college, I took guitar lessons from John Hamlin, and he was very instrumental in terms of making sure that whatever I did, I thought it was cool. Because if I don't think it's cool, nobody's gonna think it's cool, right? It's like if you feel like you're giving yourself a line of crap, then other people are gonna pick up on that. So I think that is what you're looking for, and being able to recognize it, being open to it, and being able to recognize it is um, probably the most important skill. So what does that look like? Okay, so two examples off the new record. Um, One being a lyrical example, right? And one, we'll take the song Miss Lady. Like the idea, the chords for that song had existed for a very long time. But it wasn't until I was at Jazz Fest with Adam Watson, and we were having a really good time on Frenchman Street, and he started saying that. Um, it, it became a phrase of the evening, um, and then it hit me that that was a really fun thing to say. It would be a really fun thing to sing. It's kind of silly. It's got a little bit of swagger. It's not super serious, and it matched some chord changes that I already had. Um, so I made a note of that, and then I told him I'm going to write a song about it, and then I chased it down. But it's about being able to recognize that that's something that you kind of get stuck with, right? Um, so that's a lyrical one. Another one is if you take "Stuck on My Mind," right? "Stuck on My Mind" is the first song on the record. I was in a hotel room having a good time after playing a gig, um, and I was talking to another musician about songwriting in general, and I was just basically saying he was expressing frustration about it, and I was just like, just play something that you've never heard that you think is cool, right? And so I was messing around with different grooves, and I was trying to come up with just play something funky, and came up with the and I thought that was cool, right? And I just kind of messed around with that for a little while, and I recorded a voice memo in my phone, and I was going to come back to it later, and I wound up, we'll talk about it in the second video, turning those things into songs, but it got stuck in my head, and as I was playing, I was like, I haven't heard a song that sounds exactly like this. I think it's cool, and I think that it can be something that people would really want to dance to, and it just feels really fun. Like it'd be fun to play, it'd be fun to listen to. Um, so again, it's just keeping your mind open for those sorts of things. In my experience, I'm not always in a good headspace. There might be too much going on or too many distractions. I'm not always in a good headspace to go ahead and sit down and try to work on songs and write them out, right? And finish them and come up with a first draft. Um, but I am very consciously aware pretty much all the time. Like if there's something that hits me and I really like it, I try to be very intentional about making a note of what that is, right? And like I said, it could be a chord change that you hear in a song, or it could be anything, right? So just staying open to it at all times, I think, is really important. Um, and I've heard different people talk about songwriting and writer's block, and I don't necessarily want to go into writer's block, but I don't necessarily believe in it. I just think that I believe it was a Frampton quote that was talking about you have to experience enough inputs to be able to have outputs. It just can't be constant outputs. At least for me, um, you know. So I'm constantly trying to have enough inputs and be able to recognize those things as they go. Um, and I think it's really important within that is just to keep an open mind about what you think is cool. Um, Not necessarily something that has to fit into a particular format, right? So, for example, Worth Waking Up started. That started an octave up with a bunch of delay and guitar effects, and it was just fun to try to pick out that melody. But it didn't evolve into that. It didn't really suit what I was trying to do with it. So, um, I think that that's probably probably about enough. I'm curious to know your thoughts on and what questions, follow-up questions you'd have about that. Trying to keep the video at least somewhat short, but yeah, I think the kind of the biggest skill that you can develop as a songwriter is just being open to uh, inspiration, so that you can recognize it when it's around. So, uh, if you're interested in any of those songs, you can pre-order the record, Hope on Credit. It has 11, 12, 13, 14 all original songs, and they all came from different places. They're all about different things. So, um, yeah, I appreciate you watching. And like I said, if you have any questions about it, I like being a nerd about this stuff. And like I said, everybody does it differently. So I'm curious to know how you guys do it if you have a different method. So stay tuned for the next couple videos. Again, the next one is taking those sparks and turning them into songs, and the one after that is arranging and editing. And then I'll do a video about production, which again isn't really songwriting, but yeah, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you at a gig.